Hey, what's up, everyone? This is the Dattie podcast. Today is August 9th, 2024, and I am here with Jenn Fisk over in Canada in Victoria Scalp. What's up, Jen?
Hey, how you doing, Jim?
Glad to have you on here. I know I've been trying to get you on for a couple months. Our schedules conflicted. You're busy, which is good, but glad to have you on here. Um, I was researching you before we started, like I always do with everyone, just as a refresher. And you have a really nice studio. You have is it 2 stories?
It's two stories.
How did you get that? Where is it?
So I'm just kind of outside downtown Victoria, and most things are posted on Marketplace or Space List, Realtors. But I found it on Craigslist, and it was a bit of a dump. But I saw the potential in it, and so I took it. I saw the space, and I just knew that it was exactly what I wanted, but it was going to take some elbow grease. So yeah, got it. It's gross rent, so I can't beat it for 5 years. I'm locked in, and no triple nets, no nothing. It's a great price, and yeah, it just took 3 months of elbow grease, and it's beautiful.
So did you have to pay for a lot of the renovations and do them yourself?
Oh, 100% I did. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I had to too in my first location. Yeah, it's weird because it's like, well, I'm renting it, so how much work do I really wanna do? But you're like, well, I also wanna make money and I want it to look nice, so what you kinda have to invest some money into it. But you
You
said you're
do.
locked in for 5 years?
That's correct. Yeah. That's a good feeling, especially when, I go to the grocery store and, my groceries have gone up 40% over the past few years. I swear to God. They
It's
say
insane.
4% inflation, but I feel like it's more like 40. It's unreal.
It there
So having that security is nice.
I agree. I mean, I think they're lying if I'm being completely honest about the inflation. I think they changed the numbers because there's no way. Did you see that video of the kid who was like, and when I say kid, he was probably like 20, but he said, "Here's my grocery list." He saved his, you can make a
Yeah, the
list on
Walmart
Walmart.
cart.
Yeah, yeah, it was
Yeah.
like $130, and that was 2020 or 2021, and
Yeah.
now 2024. He says, "I'm going to buy all the exact same items." So
Yeah.
it already moves it over. It was like $450.
Yeah.
Insane.
Unreal. Yeah.
And
Oh my
then
God. I don't shop at Walmart.
I won't get into conspiracy theories, but I do think it's odd that a lot of chicken farms are burning up. I do think that is
I had no
odd.
idea that was happening.
I swear there's been at least 4 in the past 2 years, and it'll say, like, "1,000,000 chickens have burned." That'll be, like, the headline, and then cows, and it's like, "Huh, that's odd. That's very
Is
odd
this
because I
all
don't
happening
remember
in Florida? Just kidding.
Florida, oh my god, Florida's crazy,
Yeah, the
right?
alligators got them all.
You're not I mean, Florida is a wild
No, no, not
little
at all. Not at all. I love Florida headlines.
Well, there's a whole, like, subculture of Florida man. You ever seen that stuff? It's always
No, I
someone doing
haven't.
some crazy shit. Because there's a lot of when it's hot outside, you got nice weather most of the time,
Yeah,
there's more crazy shit that happens because people
yeah,
can be outside, you
yeah.
know? I'm assuming up where you're at in Canada, you're locked indoors a lot of the time, so it's a little more difficult to get wild, and if you are, you're trapped in your space.
I don't know what you think Canada is. Like, I don't live in an
Igloos!
there's no igloos. I do have a lot of toques, but it's just mere fashion. It's fashion.
Okay.
But yeah, it's very mild here. Like the weather on Vancouver Island, where I'm from, mild all year long. People golf all year long. We get one dump of snow. It doesn't really drop below zero, so people actually enjoy a very great outdoor life here all year long. So
Wow.
other
Oh,
parts
that's
of Canada I can't speak to, like up north, absolutely. It's only daylight for like 5 minutes, and yeah, there's some igloos, and yeah,
Ca I was looking at speaking of the Victoria is it called Vancouver Island? Is that where
that's
you're
correct.
on?
Yeah,
It look I didn't even know this place existed, people. So I'm looking on the map, I'm like, "Where is she at?" And I'm looking at and there's like an entire city on this island off the coast, the West Coast up in Canada, and it looks beautiful, by the way. It looks really
it is.
clean and everything, but it looks like the bottom half of I guess it's like maybe the 1/3 of the bottom of the island is very like a city. Is that where you grew up?
I grew up side, or I grew up outside, like the main part of the city in a little town, but it's all very close. So it was like an hour from the main city. Um, but it's not a heavily populated island. It is there's little towns all up the island, but Victoria is kind of like the big city. A couple 100,000 people, and yeah, so
Oh,
it's small town life, even though we have a city center and metro. And I mean, we're just a ferry ride from Seattle as well. So there's a ferry that comes right into our harbor. So we are a tourist hub. Like that is one of our major industries here is tourism.
I definitely would be a tourist and check it out. I mean, I
Yeah.
really didn't know it existed. I had just kinda learned how nice Vancouver was from talking to Rachel and Donna who live up there. Are you familiar with them?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I was like, "Holy shit, it's like a marina." You know, a lot of it's like boats and stuff. I had no idea. I didn't never
I
really
did
looked
live in
into it.
Vancouver too. Like I lived in Vancouver a couple times. Um, But for me, like growing up, kind of small town on the island, like it's just a different feel. It's a different pace. People make eye contact. They say hello. So throughout my 20s and early 30s, I spent my life running from home and getting away and having a life adventure. And then you reach a time in your life where you really appreciate all those like small town values and that connection to people. And so, yeah, I came home. My mom's getting older, and my brother's got kids, and it was just, yeah, time to come back and really, enjoy this life where it is a slower pace and people are kind and they care about each other. It's like a real sense of community here, and that's a big deal these days.
It is a big deal, and it looks safe. From what I've seen, it looks pretty safe there.
Yeah. I mean, like compare and contrast with other places,
Comparing
yes, but
to
yeah.
40 minutes away is Philadelphia for me,
Yeah,
and
I'm so
I
sorry. Yeah.
wouldn't, I don't think you'd wanna raise a family there.
No. No.
It's chaos. Is it really expensive on the island?
Victoria has now become, I think, the second most expensive place to live in Canada.
Oh, sh
It didn't used to be. Like when I grew up, um, my dad was fire chief. My mom had a hair salon in our basement, and like life was very simple and affordable. People hadn't really discovered the beauty of Vancouver Island yet, especially before social media and that kind of world existed. People see photos of the waterfalls and the hiking trails and the lakes and the beaches, and now everybody wants to come here. There's a big converge on the island, and because of the mild weather, it's a huge retirement boom happening here. People want to retire here because it is very mild. So the snowbirds, when the pandemic happened, they weren't going across the border anymore. They all came to Vancouver Island, saw how beautiful it was, and then bought it up, basically. Um, so now life is like it's pretty pricey here to live and exist. So um,
I
yeah, a
imagine
lot different than
so.
it used to be.
Now, how far do you live from your studio?
It depends what time of day I come in. So I kind of design my schedule around the rush hour. So it usually takes me about 25 minutes to get to my studio.
Okay,
If it's rush hour, it'll take an hour and a half. So
okay. An hour and a half? Damn. It is I did see it. It is a city. It's a
yeah,
people for don't know. I mean, it is a city. We'll zoom in on that. Kira, maybe you could pull that up in this video, but it is but it looks so clean, so, and then the more you move north, all you see is trees and mountains.
yeah,
It looks beautiful. Looks
it
beautiful.
is beautiful. It's a really good life here. If I was interested in having kids, I mean, that ship has sailed a long time ago now, but this would have been a great place to bring them up. I mean, my dogs love it, so
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that's yeah.
and sorry, I had just seen your post about the chihuahua. I'm sorry to hear that. I have a
Oh,
chihuahua
that's
too.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's just
yeah.
so great.
She'll be 11.
Your dog's 11?
Yeah, she'll be 11 September, but every time I see a chihuahua, it reminds me of my chihuahua, right? I'm sure
Yeah,
same with you.
yeah. They're just glorious, horrible little creatures. They're just the best. So we did have a vacancy at the house. My other dog, Cheese, he was quite sad. So being that we had a vacancy, we adopted another rescue.
Okay.
So she's 10. She's got alopecia, which is very fitting. I'm not going to do SMP on her. But yeah, she's a rat terrier Chihuahua, and she's got a snaggletooth, the alopecia. We've named her Charlie, and I mean, I don't have to tell you that there's no shortage of rescue dogs that need homes. So for us, I just said, give us the most unadoptable dog you have. And we brought her home, and it's like she's always been there. So,
That's amazing. I love when people adopt dogs from shelters because they need a home too. Because there's so many people, especially with that, I don't know, you call them designer dogs, whatever. Those French, those Frenchies, and
yeah,
they breed them, and I know a breeder.
yeah,
And do I agree with it? I don't know. But people the dogs are not, let me how do I say this night? They're not the smartest dogs either because they kinda get a little inbred, right? And they're, eh, I'd rather take the rescue. Take the rescue,
yeah,
give a dog that needs a home,
100%.
and they appreciate it when you take a rescue home. They're, like, grateful.
Yeah. And it's just like, I don't know, especially with the seniors, and seniors have an even rougher time, right? So we take the seniors, and it's just like, what a gift to be able to give them like this different life, spoil them rotten for the rest of their lives. And,
Mm.
hopefully that they don't remember what life was like before they met you. And for me, that's like such a huge gift. And that's just kind of what we do. If I could have more, I would. But we adopt problem dogs. So it's just like we're all full up in here.
Do they fight? Do they tend to fight with the other ones?
I thought they were going to. When we got our last dog, we had to walk them on separate sides of the street for about 3 weeks. And yeah, they went at each other pretty hard. But when we brought this guy home, or this little girl home for Cheese, we adopted her with him in mind. So it was going to be his dog. And when we brought her home, he just loved her right away, which is bizarre because he hates everything. So it's been I don't know, strange and beautiful, and yeah, super
What
happy.
what was it like growing up with your dad as a you said your dad was a fire chief?
Yeah, he was.
How was that?
Um, I don't know, a small town, we didn't have a lot of fires, so I think that the boys just hung out at the firehouse and drank together, and yeah, there was a lot of I think there was a lot of that.
Did you ever have to go up? Did he make you come up there and do stuff?
We spent a lot of time at the fire hall, and my dad would have all the kids from school going there. Like we do tours, and we got to put on all the firefighter gear, the big boots and the jackets, and I don't know, it was pretty special. I mean, I don't think there was as much of an element of danger as there was in a lot of other cities. But yeah, I was pretty proud as a kid that my dad was fire chief, and I don't know,
Did
yeah, it was
peop
a good
did
life.
in school, I mean, with your dad being the fire chief, did was that a good thing, a bad thing? Did it not matter?
I was kind of a weirdo anyway, so
Aren't we
I,
all? Aren't we all?
no, like my dream when I was a small child, like I remember coming home from school. My mom still brings it up. She's like, Jennifer, what do you want to be when you get older? And I said, average. Like I just wanted to be, that was my dream. Well, there was the garbage. I wanted to also be a garbage man because there's a guy that rides on the back of the truck, and thought that looked really awesome. So
Yeah.
I wanted to be an average garbage man.
Nothing wrong
But
with
yeah,
that.
growing up, yeah, not in the mafia, but now that's the dream, right? So yeah,
What,
hit me up.
were you a good kid? Because you said you had left home and I guess were you moving around a lot? What happened?
Um, I did well in school. Yeah, I
They got
didn't.
good
I don't
grades?
know. It's kind of a loaded question. I did really well in school. I was pretty good at sports. I was always really good at art. Art was my thing, so that was my release. But artists are kind of weirdos too, so it made things you know awkward, like socially awkward. So I had some gifts, but I also had like logic and social skills taken away. The 100-point system. Um, but I was a good kid, and then I wasn't. So um, I don't know. I think that like our personalities kind of develop in our very early years, and yeah, I was a bit of a bully when I was a kid, and yeah, kind of a shit disturber. I like to party, and then like I had a lot of opportunities getting out of high school, art scholarships and that sort of thing, and then I chose to buy a Volkswagen van and sell pot instead. So um,
That
like,
sounds
and
fun
then from
though.
there things just went downhill really quickly. So in my 20s, I was a disaster. So it took me a long time to grow, like crawl out of, that ditch that I dug for myself. It was, yeah, I was like, I don't know. So my parents actually had to save me at some point. So I had all this potential. I did nothing with it. And then I became a drug addict. So um, around 27 to 29, I was, yeah, basically just like a zombie, like you see on the street walking around. And yeah, my family did an intervention and they saved my life. And yeah,
Wow.
so I had one shot and turned my life around. And I mean, that's a long time ago now. So I can really talk about things.
What were you on?
I was a crackhead.
Wow.
Yeah,
And
well, it was
how
cocaine for a really long time, and then crack took me down. It was
wow.
about 3 months of that, and I was like 85 pounds and had a twitch, and then it was time to go. It was time to go and get
Holy
my life
smoke.
in order.
Where were you living at?
I was actually like the caretaker of my grandma's house. So in my 20s, I had they were going to put my grandma in a home, and I was like, I don't know, like I'm a very sensitive person, and I didn't want them to put my grandma in a home, so I quit my job and I moved in with her and took care of her for 2 years. And then things got kind of like she got to a point where I couldn't take care of her anymore. She needed full time care because she had dementia quite severely. So my grandma went to a home, and I continued to live at the house as the caretaker. And then after that, yeah, I just kind of that's when my kind of spiral began. And so I was living there, but I wasn't paying my rent, of course. I was just a shitbag, really. And yeah, so I remember going to my doctor and saying, "Hey, I've got a problem. I'm doing a lot of drugs and I can't stop. Like, I think I need help." And unfortunately, 20 years ago, there weren't a lot of programs set up for people. So they essentially told me I wasn't sick enough to get help. And then, yeah, so then 3 months later, I was basically, I probably had a couple months to live. And that's when my parents remortgaged their house and sent me away. And yeah, from there on, I knew I had one chance. And nobody wants to like be that person, especially for me growing up. And, I don't have any excuses. I did drugs, I really enjoyed them. And then I didn't anymore, right? Some people have like a really sad story to tell, and I just don't. I had like a great childhood. I had great parents. I knew right from wrong, and I'd had good jobs, and then I just made a bad choice, and then that choice made all the rest of the bad choices for me. So um yeah, so I had that one shot, and yeah, I've never looked back. So
Wow. Wow. So was this in the early 2000s?
yeah, that was 2005. I went to Edgewood up in Nanaimo, and then I didn't move home again for 4 years just because I felt it was too risky. You know
Okay.
what I mean? So I
Be
didn't want
away
to have those
from
same
anybody who is associated with it. Stay out, yeah. That's what they
I
say.
cut
I
ties
mean,
with everybody.
say say again?
I cut ties with everyone. I started over. I like all by myself, like just fresh start. I remember like, and this is what motivates me in my job as well. Like, I know what it's like to be hungry, right? So I remember when I got out of rehab, I was in for 4 months, and then, like my parents were tapped out. I had nothing. I'd lost everything, and I remember renting this room in this lady's house. So I just renting a bed and staying there, and I paid my rent with rolled change. And there was like something went off at that moment again. And I said, never, never again. So from that day forward, it's been the hustle. Like, it's been work. There was like a lot of wreckage to clean up after that point in time. But it's like, you just look forward, put your head down, and you get it done. And I mean, a lot of people don't do that, which is what you see out the window a lot of the time. But for me, I was built for this. So yeah, it's been a journey.
Wow. Thank you for being very honest and open about that. I just want to ask you something else. So what what do you think you said you were doing cocaine, you're going around the van. Did you just meet somebody and then it just escalated? You like the cocaine wasn't enough and then you were like I'm going to try the crack, or was that kind of how it started?
No, it was just like I did a little cocaine recreationally when I was younger, like 19, 20, and then I just didn't. It wasn't like, I don't know. I just never really got into it. And then I don't know. I was like in my mid 20s, and I had been studying architecture. And I worked for a design firm. Um, so I had this older mentor, this man that I worked for, and when I started working for him, I was sober. I was like, I didn't drink. I smoked pot once in a while, and that was about it. And so he took me under his wing. He was like an award-winning home designer, and I was studying architecture, and I really admired his work. And he was just kind of a creepy old guy. He had a bunch of us young girls working for him, and he was just like, that's when the drugs came out again, and they were really good. They were like, I thought I'd arrived, because I was 27. I was making really good money. I was like, designing homes and that sort of thing. And yeah, it just all went downhill. And he was a really bad man. And I think that, he was in a position of power, and he kind of like manipulated a lot of us, like with the drugs, and kept us, dependent on him. And yeah, and then it kind of ruined my life. So, it happens. Like, it happens more than we'd like to admit. But yeah, so then it was all those good drugs from like the high profile
And he's
people.
and
And
he's giving them to you for free, or is he making you pay for them?
yeah, yeah, lots of drinking, lots of drugs. We go on trips. He bought me golf clubs. I'm, like traveling, and I felt pretty important.
Was he trying to hook up with all the girls too?
Yeah. Yeah. He was a bad man. And we were all being groomed, right? So
Okay.
yeah.
Did you Go ahead, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, but like that happens like all the time, right? It's like even
Yeah.
in restaurants or whatever, like it's like um like I'm nothing special, like nothing, like my story is no different than a lot of people's. But I made, like, I will always own the fact that I made my own choices and my own mistakes. I could have walked away, but I was really, my ego wanted me to be an architect, and it wanted, like that fame and that all those things that come with it. And yeah, and then my mom told me the only person that cared about my ego was me. So that was that was
It's
later
true.
down the road, but
Yeah.
yeah. So it was ego that got me there.
It's the ego defeats, or we all battle with our ego. I think every single person, alive, we battle with our ego. And it's how you identify too. So if you identify, I'm going to be this architect, and hey, this guy's giving me opportunities, we're having fun, you want to stay true to your identity, which is something, I think we all definitely challenged with that. Did you ever, after all this happened, did you ever go back to confront him, or look him up?
No, no, and he died. He was an older guy, and then I had heard that he died, and I thought, good, like that was like, good. People were like, oh, Jim Merrill died. I was like, oh, good, good, he's dead, wonderful, yes,
Yeah.
So yeah, but it's really weird because so I have like a kind of, I don't know. My life is pretty serendipitous. I have like these people that kind of come in. I don't know. I think I've got good, like pretty good juju. Like I'm kind to people. I'm good to people. I'm like very open and honest. And like kind of good things, or, like just happen for me. Everything always evens out. Anyway, so one of my new clients that I've been working on, like I didn't put it all together. She, she was like talking. She just moved here from Michigan, and we got talking, and she said, oh, she was living out, like in, like kind of out of town. There's a lighthouse out by where she lives. It's very small, a little town called Shirley. And I was like, oh, my grandma was raised in that lighthouse, and they were the original lighthouse keeper. So then we connected, right? Like there's already this connection. She's like, oh my God, I went to the lighthouse, blah, blah, blah. And then she was talking about something else, and I said, or we were talking about the names of women in their 60s, and we were talking about Barbara and like a bunch of names. And she's like, oh, what about Cheryl? I was like, oh yeah, Cheryl's definitely a 60s name, or a person in their 60s name. I was like, the worst is I knew somebody named Cheryl Merrill. And she's like, no way would a parent ever name her child but their child that. And I was like, no, it was her married name. And she's like, oh my God. And it turns out that she knows of that boss that I had that was like the home designer, like the creepy guy. And she's like, I've heard horrible things about him. Turns out her family that she married, the family that she married into, they were like these rich people whose homes we built. I've been inside all her homes.
Oh,
Like,
during the architecture days, like when you guys
yeah,
go on checking it
yeah.
out,
So
the
I was
site?
like, yeah, I knew her step, or her in-laws. I've been inside her home. I helped do like it was just the weirdest coincidence. And she
That
was
is
like, yeah, but she knew this guy and she had heard horrible things. I feel like this was just a couple weeks ago. It was weird. And I feel like I got some kind of weird closure because I'd always felt about like bad about how I had behaved back then. I knew I wasn't a good employee anymore. And I just like, I was working for these people, like doing their contracts and stuff. And again, like I said, I was a bit of a shitbag and not a really good person. And yeah. And then I just got to meet someone from, like that 20 years ago when I was that person and making those choices and not really being the best version of myself, and got to talk and like about everything kind of that happened, and they already knew because I was always like, I always had this thing inside me where I was like worried that they were judging me or they judged me based on like the decisions I made back then because they knew who I was, and then I was just gone, and I was embarrassed. And then I got to have closure, and she's a really kind, lovely person. And she's like, hey, like, why don't you come out to the house and see it again? And yeah,
You
it was
think you're gonna
really
go?
nice. Yeah, I am.
Awesome,
Yeah.
awesome. Did you remember them? Like, did you have, like, a memory?
No, I had never met her. She married
Okay.
into the family after, but I did.
I mean, like, the family, do you remember the family?
I don't remember her husband, the son. I had only met the parents.
Okay.
And like it's kind of funny because she never got to meet her mother-in-law because her mother-in-law passed away from cancer. But I had met her mother-in-law. She's like, oh, what was she like? So it was bizarre and
That's
so
crazy.
awesome.
That's crazy that she knew about this guy, this, architect who so he must have been doing it for years then, just being a weirdo, being a creep.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, it's just so bizarre because she just moved here from Michigan. What are
Yeah.
the odds that she just moved here from the States and she decided she was going to get scalp micropigmentation and from me? And, like
It's
I don't
very
know,
odd. It's very
it's
odd.
meant to happen. So
Yeah, it comes full circle.
it does.
Yeah. We're all connected in some way, right? I think we're
It
all
is true.
connected. I believe in manifestation as well, manifesting, your reality. Um, wow, that is wild. And so what was the hardest part for you? So once your parents do this intervention, right? That's obviously it's good, but I mean, when you're in that state of mind that you were in, I mean, were you open to it or were you fighting them?
I wanted it. I mean,
Okay.
I wanted it. And then when I was actually on my way there, I'm like, oh, just how about I just get high one more time?
They do that in all those shows, like, remember the MTV show Intervention? They would always let them do it one more time before they go in.
I used to watch Intervention because like my family is not wealthy. Like we're very like middle class. Like yeah, they weren't we weren't wealthy. So I'm not like a lot of like I know there's a lot of privileged kids that, their parents send them to rehab like 5 times and then they still go out and
They
they
know
do it again.
everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like they get well enough to go use again. And I remember Intervention was on at that time, like it had just kind of come out, and I used to watch it and cry and wish it was me. I just wanted somebody to save me. And then yeah, I just didn't think it was going to happen. I thought I was going to die by the time I was 30, and
Wow.
like there was no option, right? So yeah, I wanted it. And so I still, like looking back, like I'd still want it. Like when people don't want it, that's what kind of blows my mind, to feel healthy and good about yourself and all those things. Yeah, that's when I'm kind of confused.
When you were in there, what was the hardest part for you? For people who have addiction, and I hear that addiction is very strong. I mean, what was the hardest part for you?
Um, I was worried because there's some things about myself that I really like. Like I'm kind of like impulsive. I'm not kind of impulsive. I'm really impulsive. Like I got this perm.
Looks good, by the way. Looks great.
My mom did it when I micromanaged her. So she like had these big perm rods out, and she was like, "Oh, these will do." I'm like, "Will my hair even fit around those?" And then so I picked out these smaller perm rods. She's like, "It's very tight. It's very tight." And I was like,
You get it
"Whoa!"
done.
I
You just
repelled
do it.
water for like 3 days. Yeah. Anyway, so I'm impulsive. I'm funny, and yeah. So I have all these things that that I was worried I was going to lose because I'd always been kind of high or like impaired in some way.
Yeah.
And I was worried I was going to lose those parts of myself. And then, yeah, I didn't. I just have nothing to blame it on anymore.
Okay. Are you because of all that, are you completely sober? Do you dabble in anything? Are you
No,
straight?
I was straight edge for 8 years, so
Okay.
like nothing at all. And then I smoked a little bit of pot, and yeah, it's not for me. Like I don't like really feeling impaired. So I have casual drinks once in a while. Um, I like if there's a music festival or something, I like will celebrate.
Smoke some weed?
No, I don't smoke weed. I green out. Like I never used to, but like now I'm like ready to hit the deck. So like my body just says no.
Just get
Because
too
I thought
tired?
I could use more chill. I thought I could use more chill in my life. So I bought a bunch of dope during the pandemic, bunch of weed, and I was like, oh, I bought rollies too because I'm like, let's see if I got still have it, still got it. Then roll this big cannon. And I smoked like a third of it, and I was like, oh, I'll feel good. I'll feel really good. So I like cleaning my kitchen, and then I start like making some popcorn. And as I'm shaking the popcorn on the stove, I had to call over to I'm like, you need to take over. Call my partner. She's like, what's happening? And I'm like, I have to lay down. So I had to go lay down on the floor. So it did give me more chill, but like not in a good way. Like I
You get
literally could not
paranoid?
move off the floor. Yeah.
Now did you smoke it or was it an edible?
So I smoked it because I rolled that big
Okay, okay, okay. I
cannon. But pot is strong now. It's like really, really quite engineered. So
Yeah, and Canada's been legal for a while too, and, so they've enhanced but I know that if I take an edible, it's definitely different than if I smoke it, and I made brownies years ago, like a cookie, but you can't tell how much is in there, so I ate it, and then you don't think it's enough, and then eventually you get to the point where you eat too much, and then I felt you ever had, sleep paralysis where you felt
yeah,
like your sleep? That's what I felt like. I
getting
felt like
tagged.
I can't move my arms, and it's terrible feeling. So I'm like, I don't like doing that. I don't like feeling like I'm, paraplegic, basically.
No, it's not a fun feeling. But you know what's really great? You know what's really great is mushrooms.
Yeah.
So yeah, mushrooms are wonderful. Like I do it like a couple times a year. I go to a concert or like there's a festival here in Victoria called Rifflandia. It's 3 days of musicians and it's just fun. It's outside and yeah, so I'll microdose for the first 2 days and then go really hard on the third day. And yeah, it's glorious. And I don't feel sick and I don't, yeah, it's just kind of and a different kind of enlightening experience. So, but
I've
nothing
done
else really.
I've done the mushrooms. My new thing, which I would like my new thing that I've been researching and I think I'm gonna eventually do, but it's gotta be in a controlled environment, is the ayahuasca. I'm sure you've seen some stuff about the
Yeah.
ayahuasca.
Yeah, I have. I see. I'm afraid because, like, you know, when people go on those ayahuasca trips or whatever down in Peru and stuff, it's like 3 days of ayahuasca. And you just know, like, they're pooping in the room. Like, people are there to, like,
Yeah, oh
like, you're not in
yeah.
control of anything. And it's like, I don't know, what if there's like secret cameras and, like, they got you pooping in the corner and you're seeing a fox and it's your spirit animal. I don't know. It's like I have like this fear of somebody like filming me poo.
Oh, whatever. I make videos of me fake pooping, so
Fake pooping?
like, the one where
Yeah.
I'm sitting on the toilet, I'm like, "Whatever, whatever."
Well, you
But
know
yeah
what? Everybody's got their price, like Joey, I mean, 2 girls, 1 cup. Everybody's like, "Oh, I would never do that. I
yeah,
would never, ever. That's so disgusting."
yeah.
And then some people are like, "For $2,000,000, I'd do that."
Oh,
I'm
I would
like,
for 2 minutes.
if I put $100,000 in front of you in cash, I bet you would eat my poop. Like
Yeah, there's
if it's
definitely
you and you know
some
what?
people for a
I'm
lot
honest.
less.
Yeah, yeah. It's like if I see the cash,
Yeah.
but then I also want to know like what that person looks like. Because for me, like for whatever reason, an attractive person's poo is like sounds just more delicious. Like it's like, can I have a photo of the whose poop this is? Because like if they're hideous, like I don't know, it changes things. That's another $5.
Well, it's like that even with, when you're hooking up with someone, right? So, we won't go into too many details, but if you're hooking up with someone you go based on their face, even though their body down below looks different, right? So
Yeah.
it's odd, right?
Yeah.
Because if you never saw the
Yeah.
person's face and it looked like a good thing you want to get with, it doesn't really matter.
No, it doesn't really. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. We're all the same in the dark, right?
Yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
are you married, Jen?
No, I've been with my partner for 7 years.
Okay.
So I don't think
And
I'm marriage material.
nah, well, I'm sure you are if you want to, but I don't think it's really necessary. I don't think
Yeah,
it's
it's
really
just like a
necessary.
financial drain. Yeah.
It's more of like a tax thing, to be completely honest. I tell people,
Yeah.
"Do you really have to get married?" Especially, you don't do you have kids?
No, just dogs.
Yeah, so, I
So
mean, if
yes.
you don't but you don't really need to me, it's unless there was, like, some type of, maybe get medical benefits, like here in the US, like, you would get medical benefits to
I
marry
still
into
get
it.
medical benefits. We're common law, right? So
Okay,
yeah, I still like she works at a university here, so she's an event planner. So I still get the benefits, extended benefits, and dental and all that sort of thing. But yeah, I
okay.
just yeah, so I still get those kind of benefits, but yeah, I don't have to deal with the formalities of the paperwork and the expense of that and if you still get choose each other every day, then there's something to be said about that too, right?
Yeah.
There's no change. There's no chains, right?
What, let me ask you something. When did you realize that you liked women? How old were you?
I don't know. I think I had a crush on Daphne from Scooby Doo when I was really little. But yeah, I didn't put it all together. And then I don't know. I think that like everybody was kind of experimenting in their teenage years, and I thought, oh, I read Cosmo like that it was like a normal thing. And then yeah, so I had boyfriends and um yeah, so and then like people are like, maybe you just haven't had the right dick yet. I'm like, okay, give me another. So I took a lot of unnecessary dick just trying to find the right one. Just because it wasn't me. It wasn't like, oh, it's not because I might have different feelings. It's like it just haven't had the right dick, babe. So just like so tried a bunch and then yeah, and then finally I don't know. I met a girl when I was like 19 years old, and I was like, "Oh, this is what's going on." So I knew then around 19 that oh yeah, I'm not like bi or anything. Like I'm 100% gay, but I
Mhm.
continued to be bi for just random handies or whatever for like another couple of years. Yeah, it was like oh, yeah, and we could just chip fucking still because I don't want you inside me, right? So anyway, so for another couple of years, and then when I was in Nelson, so I was like living away from home. I was adopted at birth, and then I met my biological family and moved
Oh,
in with
wow.
them, like in another town. And so while I was outside of my hometown, which is they're like liberal rednecks out there, but like not super liberal. Anyway, so while I was away from home, I called my mom because I had met a girl, and I was like, "Mom, I have something to tell you. You're never going to see me the same way. You're never going to love me again." And she said, "Oh God, Jennifer, you're in jail." I said, "No, I like girls." She's like, "Oh God, we've always known." I'm like,
Oh,
why
so
didn't anybody tell
they knew
me?
the whole time?
Yeah, I'm like, why
Yeah.
didn't anybody tell me, Mom? Like, you know how much dick I've taken?
That's hilarious.
Yeah, I didn't say it in those words, but
Yeah, yeah.
basically, that's the long and short of it. Why didn't everybody have that talk with me? Anyway,
Well, that
not bitter.
you bring up another topic. So you were adopted and then you met your biological family and you moved in with them? Because that's rare.
Yes.
That's rare. I know
Yeah.
people who have been searching someone really close to me who was adopted and they can't find anyone. They did the ancestry. They found some uncles that are like 30, 45, years older. How did you figure that out?
So, like, I found it when I was younger. So I think it was my 19th birthday, and I'm 48 this year. So it's quite a while ago. So they had just passed a legislation here in Canada that year that you could have your birth records opened. So your birth record would have the name of your biological mother, their address at that time, a bunch of details, how, like what your weight was, what your name was when you were born. and that sort of thing. And if you paid, it was $100, I think, you could have that birth record open. And the only way you wouldn't get the information is if the birth mother or the other party had actually like gone in and vetoed it. So they would go in and like, no, it can't be opened. So they would have to know to do that. Growing up as a kid, like I knew that I was adopted. It was never like a bad thing. My mom told me I was chosen. And every year on my birthday, would sit down on my bed and she would say, you know, your biological mom is probably thinking about you today, and made it a really special thing for me. And she was 100% supportive. She's like, if one day you ever want to find out, like I'm right there beside you. So for my 19th birthday that year, my mom paid for me to have my birth record open.
Wow.
So, and on my birth record, it had the name of my biological mom and her address at the time of my birth, and my name. I was Diane Marie
Okay.
Godfrey.
Uh,
And yeah, so I got all that information. And then I was overwhelmed. I didn't know what to do with it. Right.
mm,
So, and this is, you know, quite a bit before like Google searches and Ancestry and all that. Um, so I kind of like, but I did have dial up internet, you know, with the phone line at the time. So I did a little bit of research of for Canada 411 or something. And there was still somebody with the last name Godfrey living in Trail, which is where she lived at the time. So that's about as far as I got. And then, as it turned out, my mom, with her little hair salon in her basement, she's such a chatterbox too. She's like, just knows everybody and everybody loves her. Anyway, one of her customers grew up in Trail, and or her husband did. And she's like, well, let me just talk to Doug and see if he knows her, because they were about the same. He was about the same age as my biological mom. As it turned out, he went to school with my biological mom and he had her phone number.
oh shit.
Yeah, so then I had her phone number and then I didn't know what to do with it again. Like I
Yeah.
was like,
It's a big phone call.
yeah. And it's like I had a, you know, it's years of built up expectations or hopes or whatever it is. Because when I was little, I told kids Cindy Lauper was my biological mom, but she wasn't. Because she looked on the outside how I felt inside. So I was like, yeah, Cindy Lauper's my mom, but she's not. There was this other lady. So I sat on this phone number for about 6 months. And then on my birth record, it showed when her birthday was, which was August 6th. And on August 6th, I called this phone number and a man answered the phone. And I was like, oh, hi, is April there? He's like, oh, no, she's gone away for the weekend to Christina Lake. I was like, oh, okay. I just wanted to wish her a happy birthday. And he's like, oh, okay. He's like, who is this? And I didn't know what to say. And he's like, oh, who is this? I'm like, oh, well, she doesn't know me. He's like, what do you mean she doesn't know you? Why are you calling her? I was like, and then I just said it. I was like, well, you know, this year for her birthday, like I said, oh, what did I say? I said, well, actually, I'm the daughter she gave up for adoption 19 years ago. And this year for her birthday, I just wanted to give her the gift of peace of mind that I had a great life and I was loved and I'm healthy and happy and all those things. And
Wow.
then the man says, oh my God, I'm your father.
Oh shit.
And
Oh
then there was just this weird silence. And yeah, anyway, so they wanted to meet me. So, I mean, that conversation ended. And then I talked to my biological mom after. And they were just really curious to meet me. So they flew me up to meet them. They actually had separated or broken up because they were young. So 18 and 19 when they had me. And he wanted to keep me and she wanted to give me up. And they broke up over it. 10 years later, they were both in Vancouver, got back together, and had three more kids. So
wow.
I have three full biological siblings.
Wow. That is so rare that they're sti yeah, that they're together. A lot of it's
They're
probably
not
because of,
now.
like, a random hookup, but they're together.
Yeah, they were. They're not anymore. Like when
Okay.
I moved up to meet them, they separated then. Like when I was like living up there. So um, yeah, I don't know. They had, I mean, the kids were 14. I guess they had been together for another 14 years. And yeah, and then it just wasn't working out. So they separated. They both have different partners now and have moved on with their lives. But when I met them, they were together. And
Wow. That is crazy. That is a crazy um,
It
Did
was
your
different
did
then.
did they tell you so is the reason why they gave you up is because they were just too young?
Yeah. My
Okay.
biological mom had plans. She wanted to go to school, she wanted to go to university and all those things. And what was really touching is my biological dad was the one. He had a photo of me still. Like when I guess when I was born, they took a photo. And he carried it with him all those years, 20 years.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Wow.
He was the soft one. And it was like, it was so bizarre because you grow up, like I always wanted to meet them because I felt like kind of a black sheep in my family.
Uh-huh.
Um, I have a different way of seeing the world, shall we say. Anyway, my family's very blue collar, but then I was always looking for this belonging, right? Like, I don't look like my family. I have different ways of thinking and behaving and all those things. And so when I met them, I think that, and as you do when you're younger, like you have these expectations that were pretty lofty, I think. Like I just wanted them to love me, but they were going through their own stuff. And it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. It ended up being a bit of a, again, another bit of a shit show up there because they were separating and everything. And yeah, so what I did realize, I was looking for that belonging and that, connection with my biological mom. And what it did for me, that experience was it made me realize who I wanted to be as a person, as a woman, right? Growing up. And it really made me appreciate my mom that raised me, So I didn't need that sense of belonging somewhere else. I had the love that I needed all along, right? So it gave me a different perspective on me and who I wanted to be. So,
That's great that you were able to reflect and figure that out. And I know how you feel, sort of in regards to you joke about saying Sydney Lauper, girls just wanna have fun. Well, I didn't tell people, I used to think that, Steven Seagal was my biological father because
I see it. I see it.
when I was 8 years old so I have been raised I have a brother and a sister, and up until I was 8 years old, I thought that the person raising me, my mom, was my dad, but it turns out it was my stepdad. My mom had never told me that. She even changed my last name, all these things. And she goes, "Hey, the guy who's been raising you," set me and my brother down, "is not your biological dad. Someone else is." Because my mom had me when she was 16 years old. And I was like, "What the fuck?" And so then she's like, "I guess there was probably a court order." And so when I was about 10 years old, they're like, "You got to start seeing him. His name's Steve." And so I would joke 'cause I had a
Whoa.
ponytail. This was in the '90s, and I had a ponytail. I was like, "Oh, maybe my dad's Steven Seagal." I'm thinking this shit, and
Yeah.
it turns out he was a heroin addict. Later, he died of 2012. He died from heroin, but I see why my mom didn't want him in my life. He didn't want to be a part of it, but yeah, it was. I always felt like I didn't belong either. Being around my stepdad and the way they did things, I was like, I don't think that way. I don't feel that way. I look differently. They're blondes.
Yeah. My
I
family too.
yeah, and I felt out of place, but it gave me closure to a certain. But I think things work out for a reason. Those events helped me to become the person I am today, and what happened to you obviously built you to where you are as well. Uh, it is wild. Yeah,
Did you and your mom become closer or?
yeah, yeah. I've always been close to my mom. My mom's crazy. I'll be perfect. She's like a dog lady. You know what a cat lady is? She's like a cat lady, but with dogs. She has a lot of dogs. She's given up on men and that whole thing. I just
Yeah.
come from a crazy, crazy. When you're 16 years old and you have a kid, you can imagine my childhood was chaotic, to
Yeah.
say the least.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
I can
uh,
imagine.
um, so after all that happened, what did you do, I guess, before you ultimately got into SMP?
I was in hospitality for a really long time. 25 years, I guess. So, well, the thing is, when I got out of rehab, like I didn't have like a backup plan, right? So I just figured I was going to die. And then I didn't. So I'm like, shit, now what do I do? I got all this debt. Didn't go to university. I didn't, all these things. Like, what am I going to do? So, I had always like bartended and served and that sort of thing. And then So I ended up just falling into hospitality because, in my own way, I'm kind of charming, and like I was able to make a pretty good living doing that. But I don't know that I loved it. I created a character to survive in that industry for a long time, and I
But
did
you
very
have to
well.
be. You have but in that type of customer service, you have to be a character, right? People want that,
Yeah.
eh,
But
to
like in real life, I'm kind of an introvert, and all
okay.
you're doing is like, finger guns and, like
"Hey, how's
mine.
it
Yes,
going?"
madam, I'm a sniveling idiot. It's right
"You don't
over
have
my
enough
excellent
flair on."
choice, sir. Yeah, glass of Merlot coming right up. It's just like that's all you do all day, every day. Yes. Yeah. Oh, right away. Love to get you that refill of Diet Coke. It's like you got to go to the bathroom. You can't go to the bathroom. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
Anyway, so um, I actually like when I hit 40, I was like, I am peopled out. Like I'm done. Like I felt done. So in the meantime, a few years previous, like in my spare time, I was like a food and beverage director though. So I worked like 60-hour weeks.
Uh,
As far as that industry goes, I had a pretty good gig. But it's exhausting, and like the staff just get worse and worse. People care less and less, and like customers become more and more entitled over time. So yeah, so I had done a tattoo apprenticeship, while I was managing one of my employees, or one of my assistant managers. Her husband was a tattoo artist. They just moved here from Spain, and she didn't speak English, and I hired her anyway. She's like, I will do whatever you want me to do. That's all she knew in English. I was like, you're hired. And
great.
so then her husband took me on and taught me to tattoo. And he was one of the top tattoo artists in Barcelona at the time, and they just moved here. So I spent a bunch of time learning tattoos, but there's always, like I said, because of what had happened to me so many years ago, I was always afraid to like take risks on myself, because like I want to pay those bills. I need that security. And I'm not sure that I believed in myself enough at that point in time. Plus, learning to like do traditional tattoos, like in your mid 30s, like it's just not the same culture. Like it's just not the same.
Yeah.
Like I'm not a prude. Like I'm definitely still a weirdo, and like, like a little off in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. But I don't really want to be like shaving big fat chests and doing Hello Kitty, and it's just not for me. Like it's just I don't see the joy in it, right? So I just, I put in my time. I learned, like all my skin stretching, and I did some tattoos, and I learned all my fundamentals for about a year, and then I just did nothing with it. So I just continued to work in restaurants. And then, yeah, so I 42, done with the industry. I was like, I'm not doing it anymore. This is like a horrible industry. So I decided to quit and just do art full time. So I was doing restaurant chalkboards and portraits, I've always made extra money doing that. I've done restaurant chalkboards kind of like all over the place for a long time. If I didn't do SMP, I think that's what I would do full time, is chalkboards. Um, and as it turned out, I could just do that full time if I wanted to. I was doing chalkboards all over the place, murals and pet portraits. And I was like, why didn't I do this a long time ago? But unfortunately, people don't really pay the same for art as they will for tattooing. Like it's
Yeah.
just, even though it takes the same amount of time, and actually like a higher level of expertise sometimes, like with tattooing, a lot of people they're stencil masters, right? They're technicians, they're not artists. So my friend Carlos is a hairdresser, and he said, well, why don't you do eyebrows? Money's like really good. Like it's really good. And you'd be so good at it. I was like, oh, maybe I'll look into it. And so I was looking into microblading, taking a course, and I came across scalp micropigmentation. And I stopped immediately. Like when I saw it, I was like, that's what I'm doing. That's like 100% the perfect fit for me. I've been a pointillism artist since I was in high school. And, my mom's a hairdresser. Like it's making people feel good. I was like sold immediately. I mean, and the SMP I was looking at wasn't even that good, but I was like, yeah, this is brilliant. I love the idea. This is what I'm doing. So then within the day, I was looking for training. And yeah, I found a trainer in Vancouver. There was a course coming up in 2.5 weeks. Threw my last $6,000 down, and
Damn. Who'd you train with?
Billy DeCola,
Billy DeCola.
Vancouver Scalp.
Okay, I've heard of him.
You've heard of him. Yeah, he was on he has a tag 2 background as well. He's a really good guy. He's been super supportive and kind of really lifted me up over the years. Um he was on New York Inc. Do you remember back in the 90s there was all those shows with like Kat Von D and Ami James
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah, I remember
it's like
Cat.
Miami Inc. He was on New York Inc. He was the apprentice.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah. So, and then he did SMP. He'd been doing SMP, and he trained a few other successful artists in Vancouver. So that's where I went. And yeah, I was over there like 3 weeks later, learning from Billy, and I just kind of got it right away. It's hand eye, and you can basically teach anyone to do SMP or not ruin lives. You can teach them to not ruin lives, right? You can teach them technique, and depth, and all those things,
Pointillism.
your needle choices, all those
Yeah.
things. But like, so most people will never be artists. They will be technicians. And if they're sound technicians, that's a great thing. All you have to do is not ruin lives and put all the dots in a row, and like, people are going to be happy with the work, right? But art is a different way of seeing. And I would say that after I did my training with Billy, he kind of said, "Oh, well, why don't you come back and do some more with me?" So I was fortunate enough to have that opportunity, but which I think a lot of students don't get. So Billy just knew that I was going to like kind of run with it, so he spent extra time with me, and I got to spend more time at a studio and in other trainings, and just like really put my time in. And then 3 months later, I opened my own little studio. It was a hole in the wall. It's what I could afford for. I knew I could afford it for 6 months, cash down.
Uh-huh.
And if nobody came, like, like it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
So, and then the pandemic happened. I signed a lease. It was like middle of March, end of March. They're like, everything's shut down.
Oh, shit.
So I was like, oh, like, what do we do? So I took on a big mural project that ended up being about 7 weeks so I could supplement my income. And yeah, when I was able to open, I only had like 2 clients my first month, but
That's
I was
normal. That's
grateful.
normal, that's
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
I was similar.
And nobody was really doing it here. I think there was a girl that had done it previously, and but nobody knew what it was. And I just made sure I like babied those first couple clients. I took photos from every which angle, and I was chatting with them in between their sessions and making sure everything was good, because it is nerve wracking. Like, even though I'd spent a bunch of time with Billy and worked on a few heads previously, like when you're alone in that room with your first client,
Yeah,
it's
that'll make or
anxiety
break
causing,
you.
right?
Yeah. Oh, I remember
Yeah,
my hand was shaking like this,
yeah.
when I'm doing it.
And you're looking around like, where's the help? And just like, nobody's there. It's just you and
Do
them.
you gotta figure the shit out by yourself, and once you start, you can't really stop. You don't wanna
No,
stop.
no, no. So it's just, and then it just kind of, those two people told two people, and then those people told more people. I'm still very just word of mouth. I don't spend money on ads or advertising. I've just been very fortunate that I have clients that love their work. And yeah, just basically everyone I see has seen my Google reviews, or they have been referred by another client. And I'm busy. So, I mean,
And you
that's
do
kind of the
amazing
best
work. For
clientele.
anyone listening, I mean, Jen is an incredible artist. She's a great artist,
Thank you.
and as far as I know, you don't have any SMP, correct?
No, I
No
don't.
SMP. Do you think has that, because you're so good, I mean, has I'm assuming it hasn't really prevented you from getting new customers because you don't have it?
No, yeah, I always like, it's a little bit slower for about a month in the summer, and then between December 15th and January 15th every year it's a little bit slower, Christmas blues, I think.
It's
But I'm
normal.
steady. Yeah, I'm just steady all the time, and I just never worry about it, cuz like, people will come, and like, I have students that come. I'm more of a one-on-one or two-on-one kind of trainer, just because I care.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I want people to do well, because I feel like one of the worst things you can do is turn out students who don't know what they're doing, right? So like, um as long as we're all doing good work, this industry is sustainable. If people aren't doing good work, they're ruining your career, they're ruining my career, right? So with your students, like, you have to put into them, you have to like really give them the foundation to do well. And some people just don't care. It's like the money from training, they're just turning them out, and it's just like, they're not, I see them. I see, and I'm seeing like more and more of it online. Like it's like not, it's not good work, right? It's not even like technically sound work. And like I said, when we first learn, as long as we're not ruining lives, that's kind of the goal, right? It's like we're gonna get better every time. You're gonna learn to fix your own mistakes. You're gonna grow. You're gonna like evolve. But I'm seeing like a lot of, not technically sound stuff, especially with the density work these days. I'm like, oh my God, they're like ruining lives left, right, and center. But um, it's for me, people are like, oh, well, like when you train people, aren't you worried that, like they're going to take your business? And like the reality is, if we're doing good SMP and there's a bunch of people walking around with good work that people don't know about and they're talking about it and saying it's a good thing, then we all benefit. There's enough work for everyone if we all do a good job.
Plenty of bald people to go around, everyone. Plenty of bald
Yeah,
people.
there's tons. It's just like we just have to take the care because like it's the botch jobs. When somebody's like looking up SMP and they go on Instagram and it's like, oh, not my work. Like
Yeah.
everyone's like, not my work. I'm
A lot of
fixing it.
botch jobs because
Yeah.
botch jobs are, more eye popping, right? So they'll get more views. They'll get more,
But
yeah,
it's like, but even posting that, like you're already like, bringing the fear.
yeah.
And, like, okay, great. Somebody else, like screwed up, like reach out to, like for me, I like to stay on my own lane, but I also like if I see something, I'll like reach out to somebody like, hey, just so you know, this is, what I think. Because I'm not here to humiliate anybody or do a compare and contrast, trying to make myself feel better than anyone. And I'm also like not here to like, try and do SMP, like impossible SMP disguising these horrible like blowout jobs. Like if people are like, oh, laser wasn't an option. I see it all the time. Laser wasn't an option. Laser wasn't an option. Laser is always an option. It wasn't their choice. And what all I can say is like he who touches it last is responsible for it. It's like whoever serves somebody that last drink at the bar and then they get in their car and they like drive and like kill a family.
That's a good analogy. That's a good analogy.
It's like you are now responsible unless you can make that work look 100% better 100% of the time. Don't fucking touch it. Like, get laser. Laser. And people are like, oh, it's so much better. No, it's not. Here's what happens with SMP. And this is the thing. And I'm seeing more people doing this, like, not my work, fix this botch job. Well, that's what, like your client base is seeing online as well, right? If they're going on Instagram, if I'm seeing it, that's what they're seeing. Well, isn't that terrifying to them? Like make your clients get laser, get a fresh canvas, because what we all know, the reality of botch jobs, of those blown out impressions, is it possible to get bigger impressions because your angle was off or whatever without getting a blowout? Yeah, it's still a little bit of a blowout, but it's going to heal fine. Those big blowouts that I'm seeing over and over again, not my work, they are horrible. They're in the fatty tissue. They're a subcutaneous level kind of stuff. So when you do good SMP, like that will, like somebody could remove good SMP with laser, 1 or 2 sessions, and it's gone, right?
Yeah.
The people that really need laser are the ones with these terrible blowouts and stuff. It's going to take a long time to get it out. But if you hide bad SMP with good SMP, the reality is your work is going to lighten, and that work is still going to be, those blowouts are going to still be there. They're just going to come back and haunt that client over and over and over again, right? So
It's gonna look very oversaturated too.
yeah, it's not really solving a problem when they're like SMP fix. It's like, no, it's not a fix, right? It's like it's a band-aid. That problem is it's like a chronic illness, right? Like it's gonna keep coming back, right? Yeah.
And I think people in regards to not getting I hear the laser's fucking brutal. Like, I hear it's very
Yeah.
painful. I think they're just afraid. It's like, "Man, that looks fucking terrible," or they don't wanna pay because then you have to go through this awkward phase, which, Alex
Mm-hmm.
Corona's kinda going through right now. He got a
Yeah.
botched job. He's like, "You know what? I'm just gonna get it lasered," but it's a process. You gotta get a session. You gotta wait a certain number of months or weeks. Then you get another laser. And before you so you have to go through that awkward phase, and I don't think people wanna go through the awkward phase, so they're like, "Just kind of fix it. Do what you can do."
And fair enough, but it's not fixed, right? So
No, no, it's
I
just a
mean, and
Band-Aid.
And the thing is, you gotta, as long as people are giving people the information, like I'm not gonna touch that shit. You'll never see me touching that shit.
Yeah.
Like, even if they get a couple sessions to lighten it, maybe then I can work with it if it's not that bad. But like, yeah, you're not gonna see those on my profile anytime soon. But people just need to be giving them like the information to make an educated choice, like for the long term, right? Like,
Yeah.
hey, just so you know, these guys are going to keep coming up. My work's going to fade. This is, it's like, like hair transplant doctors should also be giving all the facts to these young guys that they're giving transplants.
They're not, I don't think that's gonna happen.
I know, but it's like they're the broken hearts club. I get so many transplant guys, and it's like they get a transplant when they're 23 years old. Like, it should be criminal. Like, these doctors, like, I'm
Like,
sorry
you're
if
gonna
you're
keep
watching,
losing
like,
hair, bro. You're
it's
23.
criminal,
You're gonna keep
you
losing.
know? And so they fill that band. It's like an inch at the front and like a little bit here, like, like the filter with the little cat ears or whatever. So
Yeah.
it goes up here like that. And then their hair loss progresses, of course. And now they've got like this weird ring of like pube looking hair at the front of their head and here, and then nothing behind. They're like, what have I done? What have I done? And it's like I get like, I don't know, 5 or 6 of those a month, and they're young and they're handsome, and
Yeah.
I do believe in the power of the transplant, but I feel like hair loss should be plateau, like starting to plateau before you really
Yeah,
like
yeah, you
jump
should
on
be
that
to
train.
the end of your hair loss. I
Yeah,
get, are you gonna lose any more? And they have to be honest, like, "Hey, you're probably gonna need, like, 2, 3 more," and which means your
yeah.
head's gonna be even more jacked up back here. But I think some people they have their heart set on, "Hey, I want real hair," and they're not gonna budge, you could try to, because I've had people where, a couple years ago, I'd be like, "I mean, it's not, you're probably not gonna get the density you expect." They're like, "I don't care, I want," and I'm like, "Well, come back to me afterwards," and then they do eventually call me. They're like, "You know what? I do wanna add more density. I didn't get the results. I shoulda listened to you." I get that, but they a lot of people have to make their own mistakes, or learn the hard way, I should say. Your natural hairlines are amazing, by the way. Uh,
Thank you.
do you do 3 or 4 sessions?
I do 3 full sessions, and then I do a check in with all my clients like 1 to 3 months after their last session. I prefer a little bit further down the road because I want to see. I mean, because
You
three
want to be
weeks to a month
fully
is a full
healed.
heal. I
Yeah,
want
yeah,
it to be fully healed and want it to, because they're going to make some mistakes with their aftercare too. It's just like, it's like a thing.
yeah,
So, because at the end of the day, we both want the same thing, which is a really good healed long term result, right?
yeah.
So, so I usually do three. Some are four. Some of my two full alopecia totalis. Those ones, well, I did my gentleman in 4 sessions, but they were 6.5 hour sessions. And yeah, my female client that had the alopecia totalis, she was, we did 5 sessions on that one.
Okay. I've done 5 sessions multiple times, especially when I do a whole head, I have to, because
Yeah.
when I recreate the neckline, go behind the ears, everything,
Yeah.
I pretty much have to do it, especially on like a fair skinned white person, freckles. You got to be really
You have to tread
careful.
lightly.
Yeah,
Got to build
exactly.
slowly.
But I think one of the problems is a lot of people are like, they want to see such a good result the first session. You just have to tell the patient, the customer, trust the
Yeah.
process. Don't rush me. You'll get a better long
Yeah.
term result.
Yeah.
Um, let me ask you about this. Have you ever done a beard? Are you open to beards? What are your thoughts on the beard?
I have done one. It wasn't a full beard. It was scruff. I made him shave, just like I would for density. So he was allowed to have a little bit of scruff, but I had done his head has SMP. So I am open to it. I wasn't initially. I wanted other people to experiment.
I'm still on the fence. I'm still on the fence. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I just like I and again within reason, like I would have to approach it like density, right? Like I want to see where the follicles are missing, right?
Mhm.
So I'm not just going to go into a beard like yours and just start hammering in like like little
It'll
piecemeal
it would
spots.
be very hard to do it. Yeah, you'd have to. I mean, if you want to get the right look, they'd have to trim it down. You'd have to be able to part the beard.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
part the beard.
yeah, yeah. You know what I mean? I
Yeah,
mean, you want to get in there.
yeah, yeah,
My fear is, what if they want to shave? Like, say they have a beard like mine, and they just have like some bald spots or something.
yeah,
But it's like, hey, now I need to shave for whatever reason. is it gonna be, patchy? I like that that's
Well,
my
yeah, if
only
you're working on
concern.
beards, like
Yeah.
I just, like you got to have the same, well, not everybody has the same approach to density, right? Like I see, like a lot of dark hair, like thick dark hair and just bald crowns and people just hammering the shit, like filling that up,
Yeah.
like just that bald crown to blend with like that thick dark hair. I'm like, oh my God. I actually made like a little illustration. It's not kind of a cartoon illustration on my whiteboard to show my students like why we don't do that, right? So, I mean, imagine down the road, they're going to lose more hair. They're going to cut their hair shorter. And then it's also going to gray. So now they have like a black kippa on the top of their head. And
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah, like
Well,
it's,
yarmulke.
yeah, sorry, Yamaka.
Yeah, there it's, I know exactly what you mean. I think I've
Yeah,
had people who are like I'm like, "Look, if we cut it shorter, it's gonna blend better. The longer your hair is,
yeah,
I can get it dark, but it's just not gonna look as dark when your hair is that long," and they just
yeah,
don't wanna hear it. They don't wanna hear it.
yeah.
So,
Well, that and even, I mean, people, you get those clients that are like, they feel good. It's like plastic surgery too, right? Like you do some SMP on them, you match their original hair, the density, it's got a nice blend, it's not over, and then they're like, well, some was good, more is better, right? Like I
yeah,
want more.
yeah.
And like it's just, and the same with plastic surgery. Somebody gets a little bit of filler in their lips or a little bit of Botox, and like, I look good. I got some compliments. So more is better. And that's where like things
Then
go
it gets a
really
little out
sideways
of
for
fucking
people.
control. Then it gets
Yeah. And you
out
know
of
what? Yeah, it can all get out of control. And when I first started doing SMP, I allowed myself to be bullied. I have a couple like heads out there that I'm not super proud of. And it, because I went against what I learned. Like I knew what was right and what was wrong. And I remember this one fellow, like I did my 3 sessions and I was super, super happy with his result. Like I was like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
And and then he came back for his touch up and he's like, oh, he wanted the hairline down and he wanted a darker shade and he like wanted more. And I said, oh, that's not really like, I was taught that we shouldn't do that, right? And he's like, well, that's what I want. I don't like it like this. And I like, see, today I'm firm. I'm a firm no. But like when I first started, I didn't have the confidence to like, sign up for my work. And I did more and he loved it. And I am mortified. I was mortified. Like he's like, oh, it looks so good. I was like, oh, it doesn't look like good SMP anymore. Right. So, and with density too, I mean, I did some of those fills, like
Yeah.
not the really saturated ones. I always said, oh, the shortest you're going to wear your hair. And people are like, well, I'm never going to shave my head. I'm not, especially like transplant
Allegedly.
guys with their scars. Yeah, I'm never gonna cut it more than this. I just had a guy not too long ago. He was like, I shaved his head for the first 2 sessions, and then he came in for his third, and he's like, I adjusted my blade. Like he's like, I don't like it that low. I adjusted my blade. This is how I'm going to wear my hair. And I'm like, well, that's different. Like it changes the whole game.
It
Like
really does.
if that's 100% how you're going to wear your hair forever, like if you're never going, like it needs to be darker to blend with that. And he was like, yeah, I'm never doing that. So I went like half a shade darker. And then as he's leaving my shop, he's like, I think I'm going to get a pit bull. I'm going to get one of those pit bull shavers. I'm like, you fucker. Like, I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm like, well, just so you know, if you are, you're going to have to come back and I'm going to have to blend that shit out.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like, never, I will never, ever
I know.
go shorter than this.
It takes sometimes it takes the guys, a few sessions to finally shave their head. I've encountered that
Yeah.
quite a bit. And then when they do
Yeah.
shave it, it's like, oh, there's a new exposed area, especially right here. It's like, well, you
Yeah.
couldn't get that
100%.
before, and you couldn't really blend it. These little spots. Uh,
Yeah. I mean, the hair, like, even if they're using like a number one or like clipper, no guard that they shaved the day before, hair takes up space. Like
yeah.
it will cover areas that, like you're just not seeing. In order to blend, we need to be right at the follicle. So,
Yeah, I do know when I cut their hair before I always cut their hair no guard. If they allow most
yeah.
of the time they will let me, I'm like, I just wanna cut it
Yeah.
how I cut my hair, no guard
Yeah.
all the way around, with
Yeah.
a T-liner clipper, and
Yeah.
that's the best in my opinion, looks the best,
I
so
agree.
and it's the best for blending. Let me ask you this: what products do you use?
Do you really want to know?
Sure. Yeah, yeah. I mean,
I have loyalty to no one except except my clients and
okay,
myself. So I have a lot of different products in my drawers. So my machines, I use Bishop. Like I have my
okay.
Bishop OG
Shout out to
wands.
Bishop.
Like yeah, I the Bishop OG wands. I haven't don't have a power wand. I did buy their SMP pens as well, but I don't like them as much as the wand. I find the grips are pretty skinny. I can bulk them up. I just don't like the layout of the SMP pen as much. And I bought
Okay.
a bunch of them, but so I have anybody needs to buy one. I have some anyway.
I know I have like 6 freaking Dragon Hawk.
Yeah,
I'm like, "Am I gonna sell this shit?" Okay, go.
yeah. So yeah, Bishop pens, and I've bought a bunch of other machines to try. I do have the Masked Archer or 5 o'clock Shadow, whatever it is. It's all rebranded Masked Archer shit.
I have that's what I use. You talk about the wireless Masked Archer Dragon Hawk? Yeah,
That's
that's
what
what I
I
use.
have. I have one of those, and I felt it was kind of cumbersome. I have these small hands that I stole from a doll, so I did feel like it was a little bit more cumbersome in my hands. So I tried that. It is a good machine, but it wasn't for me. The other machine that I've used that I really enjoy is a Peak.
I don't know what that is.
It's a Peak Matrix. So they do tattoo equipment, but they do PMU stuff as well. Um, so they sell their stuff at Painful Pleasures. It's about half the price of a Bishop machine, but I'd say like its performance is almost as good.
Okay.
Their wireless batteries are fantastic. It's called the Forge. And I actually prefer it to the Bishop version 2 wireless battery because the Bishop power button is on the side and the Peak one's right on top. So it's just little things like that. We find out what works for us over time, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's usually what I give my students because for the price point, it's an excellent machine, and that's a 4-stroke. So it's not too light, it's not too heavy. The Bishop OG1 is a 4.2, and I think my Mast is a 3.5, right? So I do like around the 4.2. I like something with a little bit of punch, but I have really good control also.
Yeah.
And then with needles, I use the Mast. I have FYTs. I've got Tat Soul. I've got the Bishop needles. Whatever I think different needles are better for different things.
Yeah, I agree. Have you tried the Jade, the Ink-U needles, John's Rose
No,
needles? Yeah, they're
no,
great, and I'm not just saying that because I train 'em. They are actually a really good needle. Highly recommend the
no,
Jades. The FYT, I'm not sure if you've seen my rant,
no.
on FYT. Oh my god, I got harassed a little bit. Nah,
Really?
I've noticed calm down, FYT people. The pink FYT needle, I'll dip it in the ink. There's 20 in a case, in a box.
Yeah,
And I'd say like 6 to 8 of them. You start doing it's like I'll do 20 pokes and nothing's coming out. I'm like, what the fuck? And then it'll go, or sometimes it'll lock fully, the needle fully extended, and then it's jammed
yeah.
in there. And I'm like, what the fuck? And but I don't get that really with any other needles. It's the
Well,
pink
there's
ones.
that tapers. It's such a narrow like funnel also into your tapered needle, right?
Yeah.
So if you look at the tip of the plastic of those FYT, like it's really narrow through there. All it
Yeah.
takes is like a tiny little piece of paper towel to get stuck in there, and now your needles are splayed and it's not going to work anymore, right?
Yeah.
So
It's no wiggle room.
you know what? The thing is, like, when it comes to the product game, it's a business, right? Like, this is just all, like, it's all marketing, smoke and mirrors. Like, really, like, if you really look at any, like, box of, like, needles that you buy, whether it's for tattooing, PMU, or SMP, what does it say? Made in China. They're all made in China.
Oh yeah.
It's made in China. Just buy it from AliExpress. It's all the same shit. You buy like the deal is on Alibaba, you buy like 10,000 boxes, you get to put your own branding on it.
Yeah.
Like, it's, I mean, you get samples, and granted, I've had some bad needles and I've had some good needles, and like I understand there are some really cheap, like within reason, you don't want to be
Yeah.
buying your cheap needles on Amazon or anything. You still want to buy from professional companies, but when I'm looking at the price variance between like the Mass Pro SMP needles, which are actually decent needles.
Yeah, I use them.
Um,
Purples.
yeah, they're decent needles and they're like $24 a box. And then I look at the FYT for over $60 a box.
Yeah.
It's like they're the same.
Yeah.
It's the same. They do the same job. And people are like, oh, well, I have to like keep using fresh needles. And it's like, here's the thing like, skin is skin, needles are steel. So if your needles are dulling out, you're like something is wrong.
Yeah.
Like the only time I've had needles dull on me like that, and I will still switch out needles like through a treatment
Oh,
just
I
because
go
I do
through
want a
3 or
fresh start.
4. I go
Yeah,
through
I
3
will
or 4
use, I
fresh.
do, but it's just because I'm worried that, you know, like I've got paper towel in there or I'm moving to an area, a different area or whatever. I will swap out my needles. But if your needles are dulling, something's wrong. The only time a client's skin has dulled my needles is when they have CBG or the bulldog scalp. I've had a few of those. And honestly, like their skin is tough. It's thick, fibrous skin, and I will go through like 8 needles on their head.
Yeah.
But that's the only time. Skin is skin, needles are steel. If you're going through needles like every, 10 or 15 minutes, your needles are either shit or here's the other thing that they might be doing, hitting the bottom of their cup
Yeah.
or
Yep.
touching the side, you're bending your needles and then it's not going to go in. And so I think there is a little bit of a dilemma when it comes to the product game as well, because everything is made to be so expensive. Like when you're spending $60 a box on needles,
Fuck that.
like you're gonna be like pretty, stingy with
I'm
them.
using
Or the
one.
pigment. Yeah, or the pigment. But the thing is, it starts with the pigment that is like so overpriced, right? Like let's be real here. Like pigment takes, like they're coming from the same factories as tattoo pigments. Like even Stevie G's, and when we talk about like the sculpted set, it's a very good set. But the sculpted is permablend, which is made by World Famous. Like all these ink companies are related. So permablend is the PMU side of World Famous inks. What's different? Like the viscosity of the ink. That's it. That's all that's happening. Bishop Shades, that's made by Nocturnal Inks, which is made by Eternal Inks. Again, we've got a tattoo manufacturing
I'm
company at
aware
the
of
top
all
of
this.
things.
Most people are not aware of this. This is good
Hey, I'm gonna say
information.
it.
Hey, say
Like
it.
it's
Say it.
so there. And the thing is, if you're using some of these brands, like hey, you know what, Stevie G's set is great, and then you know what's more valuable than his set of inks? His color theory is spot on. Do I love his his way of addressing people and presenting it forthwith? No, not really my cup of tea, but he's an extremely, I will give kudos where it's due. He's extremely knowledgeable and his color theory is spot on.
He does. He's a great teacher. He's a great
You
teacher.
know what? Like it's spot on. It's like what
He knows
I've
his
dropped out
shit.
of 3 different art institutions. I've done color theory a number of times. He's the only person I've heard speak that is spot on when it comes to color theory. So even if you were to buy the ink one time, just to like get a feel for it and learn about the color theory, worth it. It's a great investment. But everything else, it's like if you're buying, I don't know if anybody else, like I deep dive into my products, so like I've bought all the SMP inks and I like went online, I'm like, let me see the MSDS on this, where's the safety data sheet? And it's like got some 1-800 number and it's like some like office building down in wherever, like it's their studio office, whoever is behind it. And it's like they're not making it. They might be putting a label on it or throwing it in a box, but they're not making the ink. So there's a safety in buying inks that are like are known, right? So if I can promise you that if an artist has their own ink, like they're not making that ink. Like there's artist series like in the tattoo world, like like if you look at Dynamic or Eternal Inks or Nocturnal or whatever, there will be
Mom's
artist
tattoo.
series. Pardon?
Like the mom's tattoo ink.
Yeah, so there will be artist series where they have an artist who's using their product and doing a good job with it, and there's colors they like or whatever, but it's made by like the mother company,
There's
right?
only
So
3 there's only 3 major companies that really make the ink. And then it just gets redistributed and rebranded and relabeled. And it's really what you're buying is the brand.
Yeah. And it's a lot more. So like if you look at a Dynamic ink where you get an 8-ounce bottle, it's like in Canada, it's just over $30. So I think in the States is 25 is what they guarantee. 25 bucks for an 8-ounce bottle of dynamic ink, which is basically, I don't know, 60% of your SMP inks on the market. And then you get it in this little bottle with a dropper, and you got to have like mix it like dog's medicine or whatever in your syringe. And like, it's like, but then you're paying like to get a half ounce for $100. I'm like, what is this? You know what it is? Like, you pay like $1. I see like the bottles for the repackaging on AliExpress too. And I like add up the numbers. The cost on like a 1-ounce bottle of ink is about $5. Like that's where the money's being made, right? It's like, so yeah, what inks do I use? Right now, if I'm doing female density, I'm using world famous inks, and I use their shading solution as my dilution.
Okay.
And then depending on skin tone, I use 2 tattoo inks. Again, yeah, I'm using tattoo inks. I have modifiers. I don't mix brands, but I use modifiers from the same brand. So that'll be like different shades of brown. Sometimes it's just a golden yellow.
Orange.
Yeah, orange is like, I know it's like orange is a great one if you like haven't taken any color theory. It's just like kind of neutralizes it a little bit for most skin tones. But honestly, like people have different undertones as well, and that's where you really have to factor in. Sometimes it's yellow, sometimes like you're going dark, sometimes you're using a little bit more magenta in there. But I use dynamic inks. I used to use silverback gray inks. They were fantastic, but they weren't REACH compliant. So the fellow that makes them, Randy, he's trying to develop his own brand where it is REACH compliant as well. And then another really nice ink to use, like if you're doing your own dilutions, whatever, which is what I do, is Panthera ink. And it is actually made in Italy. And I think that there's also a major brand out there that's maybe coming from Italy that is actually Panthera ink. It doesn't heal cool. It's got all like the same selling features, except it's not labeled, it's not marketed for SMP.
And I know what you're talking about. Great artists, great company too, by the way.
Yeah, and yeah, I love the values there. I love the values, but I prefer spending, $50 on my liquid gold for 4 ounces instead of 100 for one. So
agreed.
I'm a business person. I don't subscribe. Like I said, my only loyalty is to my clients and like
and that's
to
who
my
it
family
should,
to
and
pay
that's
my
who it
bills.
should be. Because at the end of the day, who's paying your bills? The clients that you make happy.
Yeah, and I'm using I have great products, but I know the stories behind them, and I do my deep dives, I do my research, I have my MSDS, I understand the nuts and bolts of things because I was interested and I learned, right? So I'm not going to pay extra for to be a cool kid or an influencer. Like I've never been cool, I'll never be cool, but I'm going to do a good job. I'm going to take care of my clients, and you know what? I'm going to have a lot more money at my bottom line because I'm not subscribing to, the smoke and mirrors, and all the buzzwords, 40 SMP, gluten-free ink. It's just, it's like, who gives a shit? Just use good products.
I think you're cool, Jen. I think you're cool.
Oh, thanks, Joey. I think you're cool too.
What are your socials? How can people find you?
Basically, I haven't learned how to use TikTok properly yet.
I have one follower.
You have one follower? Is it me?
No, it's
like
Victor.
add follower.
It's the guy who convinced me to make one. I actually have a separate phone because I'm China's getting my shit. So I have a whole separate phone just for and honestly, I'm afraid that if I'm on TikTok, I'm gonna be more distracted. Then I'm gonna be, you know what I mean?
I don't know if it's for me. But so I've got Instagram. Victoria Scalp is my handle there. It's the same on Facebook.
Your website?
Website is www.vicscalp.com or victoriascalp.com. I bought a shit ton of domains and they all filter right through me. And if you have started a company and you haven't purchased your domain yet, I probably own it because I'm here to foil you.
Oh, I have 20 of them. I got 20 of them. Hey, if you made it to this far in the episode, that I'm not going to clip this. That is a gold mine right there.
Yeah.
I own
right there.
Jersey Scalp, Philadelphia. I own all of them.
Yeah, I'm Toronto SMP, Toronto training. I live in BC, bitches.
It's what you
Yeah.
ate. It's all business.
Yeah.
All business.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right,
Nothing
I'm good.
personal. For pit bulls, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's about all I got for socials. To be like, it's my generation. We got Facebook and we've got Instagram, and then my website, of course. And people can also connect with me. WhatsApp. I'm on WhatsApp.
Yeah.
So if you are looking to call internationally, that's how you can get in touch with me.
Fantastic. All right, stay on, Jen.